Hey everyone, joining us. Excited for our first CD guest lecture series event of the semester of spring 2021. Hi everyone who's joining us right now. I am super excited for the guests that we have today. I'm also excited we're introducing a student CD warm-up, which is new to this semester, where we invite a current CD student to share a brief project with the community. So to start, I want to hand the mic off to Helen New, who is a junior in our BFA CD program, who will be sharing with us a project, and I'll pass it off now.
Oh, awesome. Sharing my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Right. So again, my name is Helen. I'm currently in Illinois and also a junior in communication design. Today I'll be sharing my project Gamer Girl, which is an animated explainer video exploring what it means to be a woman in video game culture and the industry. And this was my final independent project for my topics motion class last semester with Professor Shira Inbar. And this is the webpage that I designed for the final in the class to show my process in doing this project. In first ideating this project, I wanted to explore a topic that was personal to me as someone who's grown up playing video games and has faced many of these inequalities. This is the final animation, but I will be showing some style frames later on. And I think this topic really benefited from a critical research-based exploration in combination with my own firsthand experience, where my messaging and research could be enhanced through the integration of type motion design and sound design. And research was really the framework of this entire project, which shaped the script, storyboards, and visual identity. In creating a visual and sound identity, I looked to retro video game graphics, motifs, and sound effects that would instantly be recognizable by anyone, even if they didn't play video games. And after drawing out storyboards that followed and supported the script, I created a short animatic, which is a rough video that matches the timing of my recorded narration to the storyboards. This animatic was how I was able to match the timing of my animated renders, larger scenes, and then final composition. And following how I separated my storyboards and script into thematic scenes, I designed each scene to have a different color theme just to emphasize transitions between topics from my research. And I used Cinema 4D for the majority of the 3D animations and composited each rendered 3D scene, narration, and music in After Effects. Here are some of the frames for my final animation. So this one's scene 1. It's green and it's the introduction to the topic and visual identity. Scene 2, which is purple, is about representation of women in video game culture. Scene 3, which is red, and it's about women in the video game industry. And then scene 4 is a combination of colors from all the previous scenes, and it's the conclusion and call to action that I wanted to leave with the viewer. And having the final animation separated into 4 distinct scenes, it was important to recognize how each scene worked independently, but also how the narrative was carried across the entire piece to end on a more uplifting and empowering message and reflection. And this independent topics project was not only a great learning experience to dive deeper into new software and motion techniques, but also was a way to explore a very personal topic that I hadn't really explored in my work before. And it was really fun to do. That was my project Gamer Girl. Thank you.
Silent rounds of applause. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
I'll also shout out to Helen because of her amazing work as my student research assistant this semester for my Studio Dome. So I'm loving the love in this room. So great work. Welcome everyone to the first CD lecture. My name is Lynn Kiang. I am an assistant professor here at the Communication Design Department at Parsons, and I am really thrilled to be kicking off the lecture series this semester. We're really looking at what practice and work looks like in design, and how our different speakers throughout the semester will kind of bring their diverse view of what the field is and what practice can be. And so I am really honored that my dear friend and colleague, Susana Rodriguez de Tembleque, is here with us today. She is currently the VP of Design at IBM Research. She has worked with IBM for a number of years, both in-house and also as a consultant. She has built the Watson Experience Center in New York City. She built out the IBM Think exhibit back in I think 10 years ago with SY Partners. She's also worked as a creative director in retail experience at Apple. She was the executive creative director at SY Partners for 12 years, working in brand strategy. She's been a creative director at Wired, the design director at VSA Partners. She's worked in advertising. I mean, she's kind of run the gamut of what a powerful woman can do in design. And I'm really just thrilled for her to share kind of her experience and her thoughts today. So the format's a little different. Susana's not going to sit here and just lecture with slides for 40 minutes. We're actually going to be in conversation. And so as we go, I would love to kind of have folks put questions in chat as we talk. We'll kind of go back and forth with Susana, sharing images. But we're really here to talk about what's on her mind these days when it comes to brand, when it comes to design, technology, and kind of her journey in her career. So welcome, Susana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so I'm gonna give it up to you. Do you want to talk about the present first? Do you want to talk about the past?
Let's start today. Let's start with the present.
All right. So you're at IBM Research right now. We're working with some of the most leading edge researchers who are kind of inventing the future of technology right now. You've worked in the tech world for a while. So whether it was IBM or Apple, you worked with Facebook, you were at Wired, and the tech world is so much about solving the world's problems and solutions. So from all of your experience, what do you feel like are some of the distinct design challenges that's most pressing in the tech world right now?
So I'll first like to say that the tech world is every industry right now. So I think if one thing that we've seen in the last year, almost year, is that everything has really transformed completely. So even now, just going to the doctor is a digital experience. That's tech. When I order my vegetables from the farm, I used to go to the farmer's market, but now I have to do it and order them and buy them. That's a tech experience. And so everything is tech. So it's not just a few people in Silicon Valley or just creating technology and selling that. Is that really every industry is tech, and they're all facing the same challenges across the board, and they all really need designers. That's a really good news for all of you here on this call. The world really needs designers, and they need designers, I think, for a couple of reasons. One is, well, everybody's trying to be heard and seen, and there's a lot of noise. Even now, I'm sure you all have 1,000 other screens around you. Even now, I'm sure I'm competing for your attention. So what you create and what you make and who you are really has to cut through. And designers can help create not just marketing crap and just things that look like everything else, but to create something that people really want. You're creating the right content. So that's one area where you can really make a difference. And the other one is if you see your work as creating an experience at the end of the day. You're not just, you might be doing a small part in the beginning, but it all connects. And if you can help companies create experiences that are connected, that's an amazing need that all of these companies have. Because now we know, all of us, if one part of the experience doesn't work, then the whole thing is ruined. So those are two big areas that where design is really needed.
Can you bring in, I don't know how much you're allowed to share with IBM Research, but I'm curious if you're working on anything right now at IBM that's kind of bridging that experience design, the experience of the IBM Research brand with kind of the content of what they're doing. Like what are you thinking about for the brand for IBM Research?
Oh, yes. Well, yes, I can share some stuff with us. Well, but the first thing, when I started about a year and a half ago at IBM Research, the mission was very big. It was and very open. It's just, you need to reposition IBM Research and redesign us basically. And that to me was an exercise in two parts. One is really understand what IBM Research does, because this is a group of 3,000 scientists around the world working on things that I don't understand. And these are really cutting edge quantum circuits. It's just, I'm not a scientist, but they're doing something that is really can really shape the world. So that was the what. I really needed to understand that and communicate it better. That's, scientists are not very good at communicating what they do, but also the who. And to me, a powerful brand has to really first lead with character. What's the character of IBM Research? And that was a very lovely thing to do, because scientists are lovely people and who want to do good. And the way they work, they're actually closer to being to artists than anything else. They're pure souls, if you will. And that was very important to communicate. This is not just another giant tech company just trying to, to dominate everything. These are genuinely, sure, it's a very intimidating world in the beginning when you come in as a designer and you really don't speak their language. They talk to each other in math, basically. That's, if you go to IBM Research, the walls are filled with math, and it's beautiful. However, they really don't know how to speak English sometimes, and they know that, and so they need to be able to explain. What they do is fantastically deep. They do wonderful, hardcore papers in science. They don't know, sometimes they forget to ask the most important questions, like, who is this for? How is anybody going to use it? What for? How does it work with the other thing? So they really appreciate those questions. And then when they see their work come to life, they're very excited. It informs my work because I love knowing about all the tools that we have at our disposal to make things better. So, and I cannot do my job without really fully understanding the content. I think that is something that is really, really ingrained in me for a long time. And it came from Charles and Ray Eames, who used to be, the prime designers at IBM so many years ago, is that you can never delegate understanding. So if I'm not deeply rooted in what the science is, then I cannot, whatever I do is just going to be so fluffy and not important. So yeah, so it's wonderful, like I said, and they're really curious people. So but they also respect. They know that I as a designer bring an expertise that they don't have, and so then they're skeptical in the beginning because they think all things marketing are going to make them look dumb, which is the fear. The truth is that a lot of marketing stuff is just really annoyingly dumb. So that they are, but once they know that you actually want to learn, and that then they're great. And I would say the same thing about engineers. Engineers can be a little bit different because they think they know design and they can tell design what to do, and they like, you come here and you just add that button. So they can be very, very try to dominate. So that's a little different relationship where you have to push back and say, no, we designers, we actually have a superpower that you don't have. And you don't, how about I tell you, this user actually needs something else, and you make that functionality happen. So there's a little bit more of a battle with engineers, but it's also an incredibly important relationship.
What is the superpower?
of designers?
Of designers, yeah. What do you think?
Well, okay. We can actually make things.
Mm,
We forget that, and we've forgotten this a lot with a lot of the design thinking talk, which I know, which you know, Lynn,
mhm.
how I feel about that. I think, of course, designers need to think, and design thinking is very important. But at some point, somebody has to make something, and how you make it makes all the difference in the world. And that's why some things are good, some things are not good, and only we can make it.
Mm. That makes me think about my time at SY Partners and doing consulting, talking to one of the strategy directors there, and she kind of anecdotally in the back of a cab was like, if only designers knew, that you are already kind of doing strategy, but you also have this added layer of being able to make the thing, you know. Normally,
right.
like strategists, they just can write or they can show a PowerPoint or numbers and figures. But, you know, she's like, if only designers knew, you know, that they actually have a strategic mind and mindset for that. So kind of guys, I've always asked this question when I was at SY Partners, it's like, do you feel like all designers are strategists inherently?
Yes, designers, I think every piece of good design has a lot of strategy in it, because you've thought about it. You're not, okay, some designs can be just pretty things. Sure, that doesn't help anyone. Although that matters too. I mean, there's a place for beauty, I will say. And I will always defend that. But yeah, something that is well designed is because you've thought about so many considerations already ingrained. You just don't, voice it out loud like it's, like you hold the truth for everything. But the thing you've made works because you've considered so many of the needs and problems that you needed to address. So yes, I do think good designers are very good thinkers and strategists. But also good designers are the ones who, that craft and that's being able to execute, who else can do it?
Mm-hmm. Was there a particular project during your time at SY Partners that you felt like married that craft and strategy nicely?
Yes, a lot of the projects actually. And but that Watson Experience Center was the first one that I think was the one where I felt, well, I guess the IBM experience, but I can show you, I can share the link with you for the IBM
Sure.
Think exhibit. Here, let me send you the link because that was a fun one. So why don't you see if you can play it? But before you go there, before you play it, if you don't mind, I just want to say that in the Watson Experience Center before I left SYP, it was one project that at some point became a little polarized between strategy and design, and I believe that both needed to happen at the same time, right? So there's a tendency to say, we are going to, before we start making anything, we need to have all the strategy in place, and we need to know exactly who's doing what and all of that. And I very strongly felt that we needed to make it. And in the making, we were going to figure everything out, and that was going to set the strategy. And I believe that that was true.
Mm.
But this other project, why don't you play this video if you can?
Yep. Yeah. It's funny, this project I came across when I was walking my dog at Lincoln Center, and I was like, what is this thing? Like, I had not even heard any press about it. I just came across it. And then I went and looked up researching who made this thing. And I discovered SY Partners. And for the longest time, I thought SY Partners was a design studio. And I was like, I must get to know them. And so I just like cold emailed SYP because of this project. And I was like, hey, I love the work, like, and that's how I actually ended up going there. So I credit you, Susana, for our meeting, let us say.
That's great. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah. So this one, what made this one really such a fun project is that you don't get a brief like that many times in your life. When a company is turning 100 years old and they give you the most open-ended thing to do, which is, we want to create something that is going to make people understand what we've always done and what we'll always do, just the core of how technology can make the world work better. That is with a pretty generous budget. That just doesn't happen many times. And wow, this one, yes, as you can see, I'll just even talk about the part that most people saw, which is the digital wall in Lincoln Center, which is something that, well, first of all, in Lincoln Center, it's the cultural mecca in New York, right? And they really didn't want anybody to know that IBM was going to be there because it was going to feel too corporate for them. So they wanted our money. So they gave us the driveway to the parking lot. That's what we were given to do this project. But we decided that was going to be a very good opportunity to do something that meant more, because you were literally going inside, understanding what are all the systems underneath that make, how things work. But what we needed to do outside, we decided to create this digital wall. This was before everything was plastered with digital walls, but because it was in Lincoln Center, it really needed to look like art. That was a very important thing. Nobody should know that this was about IBM or this was about technology or anything. So we concentrated on what are some of the things that are problems that are happening right around us that we should have technology really play a role in fixing. So we looked at a few things. One was traffic. The other one was, there was water leaking, and from the main aqueduct in New York, and none of us knew it. There was, all the roofs of New York could be collecting energy and create solar energy. The toxicity around us, which, seems very relevant today. So, but we do know, so the traffic one was something that we had to install cameras and collect real-time data. We had to work with the government of New York City, which is not a very easy thing. And we created something that was just kind of like a string. So what most people saw was only a string that would sometimes create a knot. And that was the visual. Now then it would become flat or become knotted real-time depending on traffic. But nobody knew that data until they came closer and they would sit down and they would see, they would understand what was happening. This one that Lynn is showing here, it looked mostly just like beautiful flowing of air. Sometimes it became huge lungs that would breathe in and out. And that was taking real-time data from around us and saying what are the particles that are toxic and what are they doing for us. So that was clearly, there's lots of strategy and content in that. But again, designers, we are the only ones who can turn that into something that anybody wants to watch or care about, because we're surrounded by data and numbers all day long and they mean nothing to people. Another one that is not in this video, but that was actually my favorite one, was it turns out that the main aqueduct in New York leaks, I think, around 20,000 gallons of water every 2 minutes or something ridiculous, okay? And we said, okay, well, how can we make people understand that? So what we did is that we said, okay, well, this wall, more or less, let's just say this is like the amount of 20,000 gallons. And water would start trickling down, and around 2 minutes it would fill, and then it would be drained. That's what people felt, that this thing is being filled and it drains, and then people would understand what that meant. Again, yes, clearly a strategy, but only designers can turn it into something that we can care about.
Mm. And just to, I guess, round out your experience, like in the working world, you did have a stint at Apple where you were actually designing retail experience for them.
Yes.
I don't know if you
yes.
want to touch upon
I
that.
will share that other link with you. I'm so happy I had the links, because if I had a PowerPoint, it would have been harder.
Yeah.
Let me share this with you. It's another video. I know you said no videos, but it's all video. So before you play that one, when I first started at Apple, kind of as a freelancer after I left SY Partners, and they had an interesting new thing going on. So they put me on it, which is the architects, Foster and Partners, amazing architects. They had some proposal for a new store, and there was a new head of retail, Angela Arends, and they really didn't know what to do inside. I mean, their stores were going to be beautifully designed, but they really didn't know what to do inside. And they also, talking about strategy, they wanted the stores to not just take you to hardware, right? Before it was, all you saw was things on tables, and you would see some graphics on walls. And the new store design was, we really need to celebrate what you can do with Apple, and because what you can do with Apple is basically cater to all of your most creative passions. It's a vehicle for filmmaking, for music, for gaming, for painting, for fitness. So the store really became a conduit. Everything that you see on the walls, especially in this other big digital wall, is it's a place where it's all about what you can do with it. And so we created with that is not only did we just want to put that and make it in the most beautiful way, Apple does everything in very beautifully, but to actually be able to come to the store to learn about those passions. And again, nobody wants to come to the store and be like, yes, there's the Genius Bar and something wrong with my phone, but can I come to the store to really be plugged into the most creative illustrators and filmmakers and gamers? That was the idea. So we created a program called Today at Apple, which now is ubiquitous. And they actually pivoted to online, which I thought was very nice that they were able to save it in the last year. And Today at Apple is a place where you can, again, come and learn about what you can do. And so play this video, just to kind of celebrate that.
Welcome to Today at Apple.
Bem-vindo Today at Apple.
Welcome to Today at Apple.
Today at Apple, we're going to be learning about coding.
Today at Apple, we're going to be talking with the very talented illustrator.
Today at Apple, we're learning about photography.
Today at Apple, we have a musical performance for you.
Today at Apple, we're going to be doing live art.
You have tons of good ideas in your head, so it's like, oh, I like that. I'm going to explore that some more.
Can anybody find the Big Dipper?
Something I always say, never let a lack of talent hold you back.
When you do something for the first time, you have to be completely fearless.
I love that your trajectory has just been very unconventional. Like in the past, you've become a graphic designer, you work with typography, you make publications and websites, and there's certain formats that are defined, typically for visual communication. But your career, your trajectory has gone from like spatial to interactive, video and motion. I mean, it's quite, and now you're doing brand for like IBM Research. Like it's not like what you would expect coming out of, say, something like Parsons Communication Design Department, right? So I'm wondering, like, how did this trajectory happen? I don't know. It's kind of a bigger question, like, as and let me just stop the share. Like, as we are in a group of 20 something designers, mostly women, actually quite a bit of an international presence here at Parsons too. How do you chart your way forward, right? Like, how did you kind of find your way to where you are now? Were there certain cues that you stayed true to, or was it all just spontaneous luck? Like, I'm curious, as you look back on all this, how did you get here from there?
There was a lot of spontaneous luck. I hate to say it. A lot of it is not all of it was planned. I had no idea of any of these things. And in fact, every time I did something new, I was pretty unprepared for it. But I know that's not very helpful to you. I do think there's a mindset that prevailed through it all, which is lack of fear and just trying to shape things and not feeling like you can't. And so how do I explain it? So when I first started, I mean, I really started at the very, very, very bottom. Yes, it was an advertising agency, but I was the coffee girl, bringing coffee to the all male, very mean creative directors. And what made me get a job there eventually as an art director was that I showed work. Nobody asked me to. So I think that has prevailed, is that nobody is going to ask you to do anything. They're going to ask you to do all the wrong things. They're going to ask you to bring coffee. They're going to ask you to improve the layout. They're going to ask you as a graphic designer to add more, make it more jazzy. They're going to ask
more magic.
They're going to ask you all the wrong things.
Yeah.
And you're going to, you can do some of that, but also you can do more, and you can ask questions, and you can show that and a few more things. And so that's what's prevailed, I think, throughout. So I knew nothing about retail experience. I knew nothing about AI. I knew nothing about any of those things. But in the end, they're all similar problems that, if you think about it, is like, what are we trying to solve? What are the elements? And you can do it.
Would there have been any advice you would give yourself at 20, now that you're here, looking back?
Yes, I would say, worry less about where you should be and what you should be doing in your career. It's really very fluid, as you can see, and don't be limited. I would also tell myself to, as a woman who then, had kids and all of that, that is doable. That is very much doable, and to not make it more of a mountain than it already is. And to relax. I mean, I've had a lot of fun, I will say, in my work, but I would say have even more fun. Enjoy it, because what we get to do is very special, and we're very lucky to. I think these designers, we have the best job. I really fully believe that, and I would tell myself to enjoy more.
With that, I'm actually going to open it up for questions to the group. I think that's actually a nice place to stop. So if you have questions, feel free to either go on screen and ask it, or you can throw it in chat if you feel a little timid. But yeah, we have the Parsons Communication Design department here, so both faculty and students. So yeah, I'll open it up.
I'll jump in quickly. I always hate the awkward pause between. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your process. And I think something that was sticking out to me just as you were talking was the mindset, the idea that you may not know how to do all of the parts, but you have a mindset that gets you to figure it out in some kind of way. And I feel like that's just, it's so resonant, I think, with me, and thinking about like how I am trying to navigate through as well. And so I think like in school, or here's a question I would have for you about that is in with our students that are kind of navigating through projects or different ideas right now, how do you think that perseverance, or how do you think perseverance sort of like takes form for you, or what might be like a way to, give advice to students about that perseverance as they are kind of either at the precipice of graduating or, rising into the next level of design education here? Just any kind of insight there in terms of perseverance and that kind of thing.
Yes, I mean, I will say that art school and design school, they train you well. I think just surviving critiques is already a very good skill for life, because they can be brutal and constructive and both. And if you take what happens in a critique and so, okay, somebody might come, you should never go to a critique to just nail it. That's just the wrong mindset. You should go to a critique to get feedback and to make it better after that, and to learn from others. So I think that mindset is, my work, sure, I put a lot of effort in this and I care about it, and I'm not just gonna listen to everything, but it's not precious. And it's not about me either. It's about the work and the ideas and the craft, all of it. And if you are open to that critique in the best way and you use it, that's a good thing to carry forever. Because then when somebody just like tells you something, you say, okay, is that helpful, not helpful? Are they right? And again, it's not about me. It's about the work. So I think that's a very good thing you all have. And also, I would, as students right now about to enter the world, I would say, again, that you have there's a lot you can do as designers, but also don't lose patience with when you start. You're going to start small, probably. I don't know. Some of you might be like incredibly lucky or talented, and you're going to do amazing things right off. But if you don't, that's also okay, because you're learning. And you're learning and make connections and ask questions and suggest things. And that alone will take you far.
Thank you.
Anybody else? One question, come on.
Hi, yeah, I have a question. From when you were talking about earlier about communicating with other people in your company, like scientists and designers. I mean, as a designer communicating with like scientists and developers, I just wanted to ask more about like what that overlap is like and how you sort of can translate between those disciplines. Like, I think that maybe like designers have more of the responsibility to be clear about, our intentions, whereas, like you said, maybe scientists don't really know how to speak English, only math.
Yep.
And just because I think it's really important to collaborate with other professionals that way. And I just wanted to know like how you can do that effectively.
Yes, great question. So one is you if you don't communicate, you might very likely be left at the very, very end of the process, and they will come to you and tell you what to do, because that's the way it is. And then it's like, okay, they come and then just make this pretty, or just these things. So you have to communicate. And you have to put yourself in the beginning of things and shape it. And that's where you need to communicate and sometimes ask questions. And yes, they're going to try to make you sometimes feel bad. Oh, you're not a developer. You don't know these things. You don't know how things work. But you actually do know. You do not. Maybe you don't know code. You don't have to. That's why they have their job. You have yours. But you know what this thing is going to be used for. You are a user of applications and technology like everybody else. You have the idea. You know the steps. You know what something is delightful or not. And if you can ask those questions and make those points, that's a good thing. And be proactive in communication. Don't wait till somebody comes to you, because they will come to you too late. So how to do that effectively is don't try to do their job. That's not, but the questions that you will have and the intentions you have for the work, if you can spell them out to a certain degree, that will be a very helpful thing.
Thank you.
Danielle Berger asks, so earlier you discussed the relationship between good design and strategy. Do you have any specific strategies that you consistently go back to?
So let me, I mean, I'm going to use a prop here because I think this is a good, this is something that SYP did after, they published this after I left, but I think it's a very good way to understand design. Design is the method of envisioning the future and then arrange all the elements to make it a powerful reality. Now, I know that it's hard to see how exactly graphic design fits into that. But when I talk about strategy, I talk about that, is that what needs to happen? In the end, we want this thing to have all of these parts and work this way, right? That you envision that. You can envision that as a designer. You can envision that as a strategist. Actually, you can envision that better as a designer, I think. But, and then you figure out what are all the things that have to happen, and then you go and make them. So that's what I go back to. And then, yes, you know, if you're working with actual strategists, they're going to get all, you know, processy about with the steps and the hows and the numbers. Sure, that's okay. But again, always following that North Star of where this thing needs to be and do and why. That's what I keep going back to. Mm. And but if that's if you have a more specific question about this, I'm happy to you know, to follow up on this. But that's what how I think of strategy. And again, do not get distracted. Today we live in a world where this is a good thing and a bad thing. We have feedback instantly, right? You put something out there and immediately you know how many people used it, to what degree, was it successful, not successful. You can A/B test something before it goes out there, which I hate actually, because it creates lack of confidence. And all of that is good. I mean, yes, iterating and changing as you go is good, but don't lose track of the North Star. Yes, it's so easy to be like, well, that person wants this and that person wants that, and then you end up doing something that is just so vanilla. So using that ultimate goal that you've envisioned and not lose track of that, I think is a very important thing.
That is the challenge of working with clients, with working with in-house. My gosh, like how do you maintain the level of ambition and taste and what you envision as a designer in the midst of all of these compromises along the way?
Yes, I will say I think this is good advice. It's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission a lot of times. Yep. And in my case, I've definitely done more of that, you know, done things and you know, and just as long as you're being thoughtful about what you think. It's not just about just constantly, you know, being a daredevil. That's not what I'm saying. Is if you really believe in what you're doing, just try to create some space around you, or try to do it in a way that it's not going to make too much noise, because then in the end that will speak louder. And if you're trying to get all the input from everyone before something happens, I guarantee you it will not be good. So yes, it is a challenge, but be a little stubborn. But if you're passionate about it, you know, you can prevail. And if you're wrong, own up to it, move on.
Any final questions from the group?
Actually, can I ask a question, Lynn?
Yeah, Julia.
So in core interaction this week, we've been talking a lot about ethics and bias and AI in particular. And so I'm really curious especially in a corporate environment, like how much are you able to have those discussions with your colleagues as a designer? Like where does design fit into, does it is it thinking about like what could happen, or how does that play out in the world itself?
Yes, of course, we're having so many conversations about ethics and technology, so many, and from definitely bias, and we've pulled a lot of products out of market this year, a lot of around vision recognition, for example, those are out. Those are just, they're not fair, and because they were trained with bias. So those conversations are being had, as well as privacy and all kinds of conversations around the bad of technology. Design, at IBM, design is quite involved in those conversations because yes, they can think more about different scenarios. I guess there's that element of imagination, but I mean, it's not the core of what design does. But we definitely are having those conversations, and we need to have them more because there's a lot of potential good that technology can bring, but there's definitely a lot of bad. And if we don't train these algorithms properly. Originally, one of the premises of AI is that it was going to not be biased like humans. that was one of the beautiful things about it, is that this thing is going to be clean from us, but
so
no,
neutral.
because it's trained by us with imperfect data sets, with imperfect people who are only making their biases worse. So yeah, definitely. I mean, design should be involved in that. In IBM, I think we're quite fortunate to be involved in those conversations. I don't know how it is in other companies, but it should.
Yeah. Well, Susana, thank you so much for joining us. It has been just a delight to have you show your work, though I know there were some technical difficulties, but I'm glad we were able to see kind of where your footprints have been, in your trajectory. So thank you so much for joining us for the lecture series.
Thank you, and great questions, everyone. Thank you.